Hey guys, Braden with Outdoor Manly again, bringing you a video review of the Surefire EB1 backup. This right here is the model that has the only momentary on tail cap switch. That means that no matter how hard you press it, it's not actually going to lock on. The only way for the actual light to stay on is if you twist it to a certain extent, and then it will stay on. This model comes with two different modes, one of which is high with 200 lumens, which will run for 1.3 hours depending on the actual battery time, and the low will run on 5 lumens, and that should run for about 40 hours is what the website says, depending on the actual battery. The tactical runtime, which is the when you lock it on to the high mode, will be about 1.3 hours. Obviously, it'll be the same amount as the high mode. And the total length of the entire unit is 4.4 inches, so we'll just say 4.5 inches long. The bezel itself is 1 1/8 inches, so 1.125 inches. And the weight with the batteries inside of it is about 3.3 ounces. The batteries this runs on are one CR123, and it comes with just the Surefire branded ones, 123A, CR123A in there. This will not run on the rechargeable CR123s. I have tried to put it in there. It will actually make the light flicker. It will still work, but as it's like this, it will flicker to low, then high, low to high. And that right there is the indicator, actually, when you get low battery with this light. So it's always going to display that has low battery. No matter how much you charge it, that will be the case. It comes with a nice deep carry pocket clip, obviously. And it's a pretty strong anodized pocket clip. This is, I think, IPX7 or IPX8. It's a very, very well constructed light. And let's see. Like I said, the only way to actually lock it on is to turn the cap to the point of where it will stay on like that. Now, it also has a lockout feature, and a lockout feature meaning, so you can push it on like this, but the lockout feature would be to push it and then just turn it to where it's not going to stay on anymore. I'll show you here. There we go. So now when I push it, it won't actually turn on. That's the lockout feature. It's still technically sealed. The O-ring is higher up on the threads. However, this would be great for traveling or any sort of feature like that, as it's not connected to the circuit anymore. So no matter how many times I push it, will not come back on. So to fix that, I usually just run it all the way up to where it'll just pop on by itself, run it a little bit back off, and then good to go. I personally don't like the whole momentary feature in the sense of like I can't actually go and just click it to keep it on, and then I have to twist it. Now, there's a reason that they built it like this. They have another version of the backup that has the clicky tail cap. The reason why they have it this way is that, I guess in a tactical sense, I guess not in a tactical sense, in a tactical situation when you're presented with a threat, you're not going to have the dexterity, supposedly you're not going to have the dexterity required to actually push down and click that, let it go, and then keep it on. You're actually just going to hit it as hard as you can and just leave it on the whole time. I guess that's the way they want you to train with this, and I guess supposedly rarely you're ever going to need to have this entirely on the whole time. There are a couple modifications you can make to this light to make it a little bit better. I've seen some people actually swap out this bezel, and there's a couple different bezels you can put on it. I like this bezel. It is crenulated, which means that it kind of has these ridges that will dig in and give you some penetration if you have to use this in a defensive manner. And the light is built to such a degree and such a high quality standard, and you can feel the quality. You know, when you pick up something and you just feel the quality, this is definitely one of those things. I would have no problem. I could strike a concrete wall with this, and I would have absolute faith that this thing would be fine and work totally good. Now, one of the modifications I bought solely for the purpose of review, but also just out of curiosity, is the Thyrm switchback, and I'll show you guys how that works. But to take out the battery, this is actually quite interesting. You actually have to screw off the head. That's the only way the battery will come out. If you keep it in there and you just screw off the tail cap like I have it shown, the battery will not come out. So that's kind of interesting. That means that you can actually, what essentially that means is that you can swap this for the clicky tail cap, and it should be the same. One thing I do really like, though, is how long these springs are. I really don't like it when flashlight manufacturers have their contact springs for the negative side very, very, very short, because that means sometimes the manufacturers, batteries are produced on such a scale where they can differ from size, even by, you're talking about a millimeter or less. This will actually provide the correct kind of contact that you'll need to provide a constant, flow of energy to the light. And also, when the spring isn't long enough, it'll just barely push down against the battery in the back, and you'll hear it jiggle. And with this guy, when you have it actually cranked down, you hear nothing. It's a very, very stout little light. So let me show you kind of what the Thyrm switchback is. I did a review on it, but I just kind of want to cover it again. You essentially just throw it on top of the bezel itself, and then you'd actually go and screw it on. I feel like the construction of the Thyrm, like I said, covered in my other review, it's limiting, but it provides some interesting functionality for the actual light. So essentially what you do is you'd have this in your hand, you'd have your firearm in the other hand, and you would push against this with your thumb, this little jet out deal. You'd push against it, and that would keep it on, because the button's being pushed against the top here, your middle finger. So you'd push against that, have your firearm in your other hand. You can use these fingers to grab on to the rest of the grip of your firearm, and that way you can actually operate a light whilst using your firearm and keep some fingers free. So for subcompact Glocks or other firearms that don't have a rail, or just firearms that you don't have the ability to mount a light onto it physically, this might be a good option. So another feature of this light that I really enjoyed was the actual depth of the bezel itself. The LED is sat so far down into the actual bezel that it gives some pretty decent as far as projection of the beam. There's not a lot of flood, not a lot of spill, but there's definitely a lot of throw to the light. So it can reach pretty far out there, and for only being 200 lumens, you're gonna need it. Now that kind of gets me onto my next point here about Surefire. I feel like Surefire really doesn't push the envelope as far as technology. They definitely overbuild their flashlights, which is why a lot of people like them, because they just feel sturdy in hand. So it's kind of like the 1911 approach. If you just build a firearm that's super sturdy feeling, and it's just and I have definitely no qualms about the reliability of this flashlight. From my experiences, I wouldn't have had any issues with it, aside from the fact it can't take the rechargeable 123As. But they don't really push the envelope as far as technology. They don't really produce any crazy high lumen flashlights that are going to be affordable, or that are going to be, running on a few cells. Their really high lumen flashlights are going to be taking like 4 18650s and just insane. This guy for a CR123, and given it's only one cell, I understand that, but for 3 volts, you can really crank out a lot. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are cranking 400-600 lumens out of one single cell, and they're able to maintain a decent runtime. So, that's the one thing. Surefire, just as a brand, really is kind of lacking as far as technology and what they can do with their manufacturing processes. Now, these are geared mainly for law enforcement officers, other, federal entities, other people that rely on lights, and that's their primary audience. As far as EDC, this thing's a bit heavy for what it does, and the limitations of it are quite extreme, given that you only have 2 modes, both of which are too bright for reading, and the highest mode's way too underpowered for anything, usable. I would, this would be a fine backpacking light, because I wouldn't be concerned about it getting broken or anything like that. And it's nice that it runs on just one cell, but it's kind of, it's a more difficult to find cell. CR123s are becoming more and more mainstream, but I mean, for 200 lumens, you could literally put a AA in there, and there are companies that are producing more lumens, for less cost with a AA battery, and AA's are everywhere. They're, you know, you can find them in remotes or anything like that. So definitely probably not a good bug out choice or any sort of survivalist flashlight, but and especially for the money, Surefire wants like close to $250 for this guy. Horrible value. One of the worst values I've ever seen. I got this one in a trade. I felt like I got a fair deal out of it, but still. There's better options out there. This is a great flashlight, though. If you can come across one for a good deal, I definitely say pick it up if you're looking for a real strong, sturdy flashlight that you can impress your friends with. This is like the Rolex of flashlights. It's not really the best, but it looks nice, and it has Surefire's name on it, which itself apparently is worth an extra $120, so... Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in to my review of the Surefire EB1 backup. Stay tuned for more flashlight reviews, gear reviews, survivalist tips, and we're going to be doing some bug outs here in the future. So, thanks for tuning in, guys. Outdoor Manly, out.